When David Chen became Los Angeles's most sought-after wedding photographer, couples trusted him to capture their most precious moments. But when his fentanyl addiction and blackmail schemes consumed him, he began photographing crimes and murdering witnesses who discovered his activities, turning photo shoots into deadly surveillance operations. Before starting the video, don't forget to subscribe to the channel and turn on notifications. Now, let's get back to the video. The California golden hour light filtered through Los Angeles's Hollywood Hills. David Chen organized his camera equipment and lighting gear for what would become the most dangerous photo shoot of his 16-year career as Southern California's most acclaimed wedding and event photographer. At 42 years old, David had established himself as Los Angeles's premier photography specialist, capturing intimate weddings and exclusive private events for entertainment industry professionals, tech entrepreneurs, and wealthy families who valued his artistic vision and his reputation for maintaining absolute confidentiality about their private celebrations and personal moments. David's photography studio occupied a converted warehouse space in Los Angeles's Arts District, featuring professional lighting systems, high-end camera collections, and private editing suites where he processed sensitive images for clients who demanded both artistic excellence and complete discretion about their private events and family gatherings. His clientele included A-list celebrities whose weddings required paparazzi-proof security, business executives hosting confidential corporate retreats, and international investors whose private parties needed documentation that would never appear in public media. The interior of David's studio reflected his mastery of photographic artistry and his understanding of elite clients' expectations for both creative excellence and privacy protection, featuring walls displaying award-winning photography from prestigious competitions, testimonials from grateful clients whose events had been perfectly captured, and specialized equipment for handling the most challenging lighting conditions and security requirements. His camera cases contained professional gear worth hundreds of thousands of dollars and client access credentials that emphasized his trusted status among Los Angeles's most exclusive social circles. But beneath David's reputation for photographic excellence lay a dangerous combination of fentanyl addiction, systematic blackmail operations, and calculated murder that had transformed his photography services into criminal enterprises where threatening clients and suspicious investigators met their fate through compromising surveillance and witness elimination. "Good afternoon, David," said Sofia Martinez, his 2 o'clock client and a 47-year-old entertainment attorney whose daughter's wedding required David's photography expertise for capturing the exclusive ceremony at their Malibu estate while ensuring complete privacy from media attention. Sofia had recently discovered suspicious equipment in areas where David had worked and had begun questioning his explanations about advanced photography techniques and security monitoring systems that he claimed were standard for high-profile event documentation. "Good afternoon, Mrs. Martinez," David replied with the artistic authority and photographic expertise that had made him legendary among Los Angeles's entertainment elite, who viewed him as both visual artist and privacy guardian, capable of creating stunning wedding photography while ensuring absolute protection from unwanted media exposure and maintaining discretion about their personal celebrations. "I've prepared the specialized equipment for tomorrow's ceremony, and I can guarantee that your daughter's wedding will be captured with both artistic beauty and complete security from any unauthorized photography or media intrusion." Sofia had become David's most dangerous client, not because of her demanding photography requirements or her security concerns, but because of her recent discovery of hidden surveillance equipment and her growing awareness of the blackmail operation that David had been conducting while supposedly providing legitimate wedding photography services to Los Angeles's wealthy families. What Sofia didn't know was that David had been systematically blackmailing clients and murdering witnesses for over 4 years, using his photography expertise and access to private events to document compromising activities while eliminating anyone who discovered his criminal surveillance and extortion operations. David's transformation from celebrated photographer to calculating killer had begun 6 years earlier, when his prescription opioid addiction had escalated from legitimate pain management following a workplace injury to daily dependency on fentanyl and other street drugs that consumed his photography business profits and forced him into desperate relationships with organized crime figures who controlled Los Angeles's drug distribution networks and illegal surveillance operations. His addiction had grown to cost over $700 per day, while his access to private events and intimate family moments had provided perfect opportunities for gathering blackmail material and conducting surveillance for criminal organizations. Faced with increasing pressure from drug suppliers and potential exposure by suspicious clients, David had begun using his photography access to conduct systematic blackmail operations, secretly documenting compromising activities during weddings and private events while coordinating with criminal organizations who paid substantial fees for surveillance intelligence and compromising materials that could be used for extortion and witness intimidation. His criminal activities had escalated when several clients had discovered evidence of unauthorized surveillance and had threatened to report their suspicions to law enforcement agencies, investigating privacy violations and blackmail patterns targeting Los Angeles's entertainment industry and wealthy residential communities. David had murdered his first victim, a prominent producer who had detected hidden cameras during a family wedding, by injecting him with a lethal dose of fentanyl during what appeared to be a routine photography consultation about event security and media protection. The success of his first murder had convinced David that eliminating suspicious clients and threatening investigators was both necessary for protecting his surveillance operation and relatively easy to accomplish, given his access to private events and his knowledge of clients' personal schedules and security vulnerabilities. Over the following 4 years, David had murdered 12 additional individuals using various methods that took advantage of his photography knowledge, his access to private events during vulnerable celebration periods, and his ability to stage deaths as drug overdoses or accidents that occurred during high-stress event planning and family gatherings. His victims had been carefully selected based on their discovery of his surveillance activities, their potential cooperation with authorities, and their involvement in events that provided opportunities for private elimination and evidence disposal. His victims had included Dr. Patricia Williams, a privacy rights attorney who had discovered evidence of illegal surveillance and whose wedding photography consultation had resulted in fatal fentanyl overdose disguised as stress-related medical emergency. Jennifer Foster, a wealthy socialite who had reported unauthorized recording equipment and whose family event had ended in fatal accident from rigged photography lighting equipment. And David Rodriguez, a federal privacy investigator who had been tracking surveillance operations and whose photography studio visit had resulted in fatal exposure to concentrated carfentanil disguised as photographic chemical accident. David, I need to discuss some serious concerns about privacy violations and reports of surveillance activities connected to your photography services, said Detective Sarah Martinez of the Los Angeles Police Department's Privacy Crimes Division as she arrived at David's studio carrying warrants to inspect his equipment and interview him about suspicious activities. Detective Martinez specialized in investigating illegal surveillance and blackmail operations and had developed expertise in recognizing patterns of privacy violations that exploited photography services and clients' trust in professional event documentation. Detective Martinez's investigation represented an existential threat to David's criminal operation, as her law enforcement expertise and access to surveillance crime databases could expose the systematic blackmail operations and connect him to multiple suspicious deaths during photography consultations and event planning meetings. Of course, Detective Martinez, David replied, though he felt the familiar surge of fentanyl withdrawal anxiety and criminal desperation that accompanied any official scrutiny of his photography operations by law enforcement officers who possessed the training and resources to detect evidence of illegal surveillance and systematic murder disguised as drug overdoses or photography accidents. Client privacy and artistic integrity are always my highest priorities, and I want to cooperate with any investigation that might help protect clients and ensure that photography services operate according to all applicable privacy laws and professional standards. Detective Martinez consulted detailed reports from privacy violation investigators and suspicious death analysts that showed patterns of unauthorized surveillance and client deaths that suggested systematic criminal activity rather than random privacy breaches or legitimate photography accidents during event documentation work. David, I've been investigating reports of illegal surveillance and privacy violations that appear to be connected to events where you've provided photography services, Detective Martinez said, with the investigative precision that had made her successful in solving complex privacy crime cases. 12 individuals who were clients of your photography business have died under suspicious circumstances, with several of these deaths occurring immediately after the victims had discovered unauthorized recording equipment or had expressed concerns about privacy violations during your event photography work. The detective's identification of the surveillance patterns and her recognition of the timing correlation between privacy concerns and client deaths confirmed David's worst fears that his criminal activities had been analyzed and connected to his systematic elimination of suspicious clients and exploitation of photography access for organized surveillance and blackmail operations. David's response was swift and deadly as he realized that eliminating Detective Martinez was essential for protecting his criminal enterprise and preventing exposure of his systematic surveillance and murder operations. Detective Martinez, I think there may be some misunderstanding about advanced photography techniques and the unfortunate reality that high-stress event situations can sometimes lead to medical emergencies despite proper safety protocols and professional equipment handling, David said, while discreetly reaching for a modified camera flash unit that he had weaponized to deliver concentrated carfentanil through aerosol release for emergency elimination of law enforcement threats. Perhaps we could discuss these concerns in my equipment room, where I can demonstrate the photography techniques that might explain these tragic coincidences. Professional event photography involves complex technical systems that might appear suspicious to those unfamiliar with advanced lighting equipment and security monitoring procedures. Detective Martinez agreed to examine David's photography equipment, not realizing that the photographer was leading her to a soundproof equipment room where previous murders had been committed and where David planned to kill her using his weaponized flash unit that would release fatal carfentanil through what would appear to be accidental exposure to photography chemicals. David's plan involved convincing Detective Martinez to examine specific photography equipment while explaining technical procedures, then using his modified flash unit to release carfentanil that would cause rapid respiratory failure while appearing to be accidental chemical exposure from photographic processing equipment rather than deliberate murder by a photographer protecting his surveillance and blackmail operations. But David's carefully planned murder of the detective was about to be prevented by the unexpected arrival of federal agents who had been investigating drug trafficking networks and had identified connections to his photography business. Special Agent Michael Torres of the DEA's Organized Crime Division had been conducting a comprehensive investigation into fentanyl trafficking and addiction-related crimes that exploited legitimate service businesses to facilitate drug distribution and eliminate potential witnesses to criminal activities. Agent Torres specialized in investigating drug-related surveillance operations and had developed expertise in tracking criminal photographers and media professionals who were used to gather intelligence while conducting systematic elimination of threats to drug trafficking networks. The federal investigation had been initiated by reports from multiple entertainment industry sources and privacy advocacy organizations who had noticed patterns of suspicious surveillance and drug-related deaths that suggested organized criminal networks were using photography services to gather blackmail material while eliminating potential witnesses through sophisticated drug poisoning methods. Agent Torres had been conducting surveillance of David's drug procurement activities and photography operations and had documented evidence of systematic fentanyl use, involvement in illegal surveillance, and suspicious patterns of client deaths that suggested his photography expertise was being used for organized criminal activity rather than legitimate event documentation services. David Chen, I'm Special Agent Torres with the DEA, he announced as he entered the equipment room where David was preparing to poison Detective Martinez. I have federal warrants for your arrest on charges of fentanyl trafficking, systematic surveillance operations, conspiracy to commit murder, and multiple counts of first-degree murder related to your systematic exploitation of photography services for criminal surveillance activities and drug-related elimination operations. David's reaction to the federal agent's intervention was a combination of photography authority, confusion, and desperate attempts to maintain his artistic credibility. As he realized that law enforcement agencies at multiple levels had been investigating his drug activities and had connected them to systematic client murders and organized surveillance operations. His carefully maintained reputation as a celebrated photographer had failed to protect him from comprehensive investigation by agencies with expertise in drug-related crimes and illegal surveillance techniques. Special Agent Torres, there must be some serious misunderstanding about legitimate photography work and the complex technical requirements involved in professional event documentation that requires specialized equipment and advanced security monitoring systems, David said frantically, while abandoning his plan to poison Detective Martinez and attempting to preserve some semblance of artistic professionalism, despite the overwhelming evidence against his criminal activities. I am a certified professional photographer with 16 years of experience providing event documentation services for Los Angeles' most prestigious clients. All of my photography work complies with established privacy standards and artistic practices designed to ensure client satisfaction and event security. Detective Martinez looked absolutely stunned as she realized how close she had come to being murdered by the photographer she had been investigating for illegal surveillance. Her privacy crimes investigation had not only exposed David's surveillance and murder operation, but had also prevented her own death at the hands of a killer who had been using photography services as cover for systematic elimination of clients and law enforcement threats. The comprehensive investigation that followed David's arrest revealed the full scope of his criminal enterprise and the sophisticated methods he had developed to exploit photography expertise for systematic surveillance and murder. Forensic analysis of David's photography operations revealed extensive evidence of his surveillance activities, including sophisticated hidden camera equipment disguised as photography gear, vast collections of compromising materials organized for blackmail purposes, and detailed records showing coordination between surveillance targets and elimination schedules. His studio contained weaponized photography equipment, drug trafficking documentation, and comprehensive files containing blackmail materials on dozens of wealthy clients who had been targeted for systematic surveillance and extortion. The investigation also uncovered David's connections to organized crime figures who had been coordinating surveillance operations and drug trafficking while using his photography access to gather intelligence on wealthy targets and eliminate potential witnesses through sophisticated drug poisoning methods disguised as photography accidents. Most disturbing was the discovery of David's detailed knowledge of surveillance technology and drug delivery systems, which he had used to develop increasingly sophisticated methods for gathering blackmail material while eliminating threats through photography equipment that had been modified to deliver fatal doses of synthetic drugs. David Chen was ultimately convicted of 13 counts of first-degree murder, systematic surveillance operations, fentanyl trafficking, conspiracy to commit organized criminal enterprise activities, and numerous other charges related to his exploitation of photography services for criminal surveillance activities and drug-related elimination operations. The conviction sent unprecedented shockwaves throughout Los Angeles' photography and entertainment services community, prompting immediate reforms in photographer licensing, privacy protection protocols, and drug addiction prevention measures designed to protect wealthy clients from exploitation by trusted photography professionals involved in organized criminal activities. Several other photographers and event documentation specialists were investigated for similar criminal activities, resulting in enhanced oversight of photography operations and new requirements for equipment verification, privacy compliance, and client protection measures that made it more difficult for criminals to exploit photography services for systematic surveillance and murder. Detective Martinez and Special Agent Torres received recognition for their collaborative investigation and became specialists in photography-based crime investigation, developing new techniques for identifying surveillance operations and protecting event clients from exploitation by criminal photography professionals. Sofia Martinez and other surviving clients required extensive security consultations and privacy protection services to overcome the trauma of learning that their trusted photographer had been systematically conducting surveillance on their private events and murdering clients while exploiting his photography access for organized criminal activities. The photography industry implemented comprehensive new safety protocols designed to protect clients from exploitation by unethical photography providers. The case prompted comprehensive changes in photography industry regulation, including mandatory background checks and drug testing for all professional photographers, enhanced oversight of surveillance equipment and privacy compliance, real-time monitoring of photography equipment during events, and new reporting procedures for suspicious photography activities involving client privacy or potential surveillance indicators. David's conviction also led to increased cooperation between photography industry organizations and law enforcement agencies investigating organized crime, with new protocols designed to identify photography services that might be exploiting their event access for systematic criminal activities while eliminating potential witnesses. The photography and broader event services industries implemented revolutionary new safety measures, including enhanced screening procedures for photography professionals, comprehensive client privacy protection programs, mandatory reporting of suspicious photography activities, and improved training for recognizing signs of drug addiction and organized crime involvement among photographers. 5 years after David's conviction and life imprisonment, Los Angeles's photography community continued to implement safeguards designed to protect clients from photographers who might abuse their positions of trust and event access for criminal purposes. The photographer who had promised to capture life's most precious moments and preserve beautiful memories for families had instead used his photography expertise and event access to commit systematic surveillance and murder while exploiting clients' trust and vulnerability during their most intimate celebrations. However, his crimes had been thoroughly exposed, and his victims had found justice through the dedication of investigators who refused to accept drug-related deaths as mere addiction tragedies. David Chen's final shot had been permanently developed in the darkroom of justice, where he would serve multiple life sentences without possibility of parole, proving that even photography professionals who attempted to exploit their artistic expertise for criminal gain could be identified, investigated, and brought to justice when dedicated law enforcement agencies worked together to protect innocent clients from predatory photographers. The photographer's final shot had captured his permanent confinement behind bars, serving as a lasting reminder that those entrusted with preserving our most precious memories must never abuse that sacred responsibility, and that photography professionals who would exploit client trust and event access for criminal gain will ultimately face the full consequences of their betrayal of artistic integrity and human privacy. Thank you very much for listening. Please let us know what you think of this story in the comments. Don't forget to like the video and subscribe to the channel. Turn on notifications so you don't miss any other videos.